Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Bat Around. I'm starting the show over again. I'm wondering if anybody can hear me. If you can hear me, please let me know in the chat. It said in the top of my screen that my mic was muted, but the mic icon at the bottom was not muted. Couldn't fix that. Jumped out, jumped back in. Can anybody hear me now? Anybody? Well, I'm going to assume that people can hear me at this point because nothing says that I'm muted on the screen. I have no viewers of the show right now, apparently, which sucks because I went on an epic rant about this loss today. Orioles had a 6-3 lead in the eighth inning, lost a ball game. Today's show brought to you by Classic 5 Golf. If you want to improve your golf game or learn to play for the first time, the Baltimore Golf Academy has fun instructional programs for the beginner golfer to everyday players. The Baltimore Golf Academy can take your game to the next level. Enroll today at baltimoregolfacademy.com. So the Orioles had a 6-3 lead in the eighth inning today. Cade Povich pitched in and out of trouble, gave up 2 runs in 4 2/3 innings, and even though Brandon Hyde was removed from the game, he was Povich was inexplicably removed from the game at 76 pitches with 2 outs in the 5th inning in a ball game in which he led. I believe 4-2 at the time. And there was Brian Baker came in. He threw 5 pitches, struck out George Springer, who was clearly hurt. He looks like he's probably going to be out for a while with that whatever that wrist injury was. Yeah, I don't know what the deal was there, Zach. Picktown Sports has commented, "Hey, there we go." I had to leave the show and come back in because the mic icon on my microphone was not muted, but it said muted at the top of the screen, and I couldn't turn that off. So I had to start the show all over again. But the Orioles, they blow a 6-3 eighth inning lead. Cade Povich taken out with 76 pitches and 2 outs in the 5th inning. Brian Baker throws 5 pitches. He gets taken out after that. And then there's a trickle-down effect because then you're using relievers that you probably don't have to use after that. And joining us now on the show is Glenn Clark. Glenn, you hopped in at the right time because my mic was muted the first 8 minutes of this epic rant that I went on after the Orioles blew that game, and there was no way to unmute my mic. I had to stop the show and jump back in. But anyway, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me today. Did you watch that game?
Of course I watched the game, Paul. I saw what you tweeted, and I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong, but I'm also still going to say you had a 6-3 lead in the 8th inning, and none of these guys are overworked. Could you left Cade Povich in? Sure. We're kind of bending a little bit for Cade Povich and suggesting that he's been really good when he's been more like miraculously not worse, given how many guys he's put on base.
Sure.
He's not been very good, and that's okay. He's not supposed to be very good right now. The problem is they don't have guys that are very good. I had no problem in the moment getting Cade Povich in that spot when the game's close and he's in trouble. I had no issue with it, and I can't pretend like I have an issue with it now. It's really hard for me to blame anyone for the fact that they had a 6-3 lead, and that these guys aren't overworked. They can pitch back-to-backs. The Baker one, I'll give you more of a he pitched yesterday. He only pitched 5 pitches. Could he have gone longer? Maybe. But the overworking isn't the problem. They had 2 days off. They played yesterday. You just can't give up 3 runs in the 8th inning. You can't do that. It's unfathomable that that's the way that it plays out. And Tyler O'Neill can't strike out in the 10th inning when all you have to do is get contact, do something, be productive in any way. But Tyler O'Neill's an outcomes guy. This is what happens when you convince yourself that you can replace Anthony Santander with Tyler O'Neill. So I know what you're saying, and I get it, but I can't do the bit where I think that there's going to be a better result coming from Cade Povich. I think we're allowing ourselves to get carried away with Cade Povich because everything is so bad that
Mhm.
like anything that doesn't look like it's complete hell in context ends up being pleasant. We can't. We are changing reality to make it seem like Cade Povich has been particularly good.
Well, Glenn, I can tell you I can do the bit because I wrote the tweet in the fifth inning when they took him out of the game, and I deleted it 100% because I didn't feel like dealing with the backlash from anybody who disagreed with me. And I was being a baby in the moment. I'm like, I don't want to tweet this and then have to deal with people disagreeing with me and then me just getting irritated about that. I felt like Cade Povich had 76 pitches, had an opportunity to get a win for that game in that game. To qualify for the win in the ball game. And of course, then you look at the domino effect that happens afterwards. And of course, hindsight is 2020. So when Baker throws 5 pitches, he's taken out of the game. Aiken comes in after Dominguez, and he doesn't pitch particularly well. And then Soto comes in. I'm sorry, it was Aiken, and then it was Dominguez. Aiken doesn't pitch particularly well. Then Dominguez comes in and pitches well. Soto comes in and he craps the bed. Then you can look back and be like, I was right. I should have tweeted out then, so I don't look like a bandwagoner or whatever the hell the term is for this one at this point. But I'm just so irritated at the fact that they lost that ball game right today, Glenn, because it's the first time all year that they've scored more than 3 runs in a game in back-to-back games. It would have been the first time all year that they would have won back-to-back games, and it would have been the first time all year that they won a series. And now you're looking at another kiss your sister series with Toronto Blue Jays where you split a small 2-game series after the rainout. You're looking at a rotation where, you've got 3 starters with ERAs under 4. Zach Eflin, 3 ERA, but he's on the 15-day IL. Povich at 360, and Tommy Sagano at 386.
But the Povich thing is a miracle. This is my problem with this, right? Like
hang on. Before you continue, what I'm saying there is Povich's whip is 1.8. Sagano 1.571. Yeah. Kramer at an 8.16 ERA has a 16.74 whip. Charlie Morton at 8.78 ERA, 18.75 whip. We think that Povich looks better because everything else has been so bad that it's like watching the 2021 Orioles again.
Yep, that's the reality. This is the problem. I know the crux of your argument. I just don't think anything good was happening with Cade Povich. I want Cade Povich to be good, and I do think it is. This is where my buddy Steve Johnson always gets on me. Like you do need to credit somebody for limiting damage. Like that is part of the job. That's part of pitching, and that's true. But assuming it's going to continue, I don't think Cade Povich is so wily and crafty that we can count on the fact that he's going to just continue to put guys on base all the time and know somehow, some way how to get out of danger. I've seen nothing about that. It comes off more as pure luck to me right now that Cade Povich isn't worse statistically than what he's been, which has been really bad, right? And with runners on second and third in that spot, and it worked, right? Like you bring Baker in, he comes in, and I know the Springer thing is weird because he got hurt in the middle of the at bat, but like, he got the job done. He did what he was supposed to do.
Sure.
And so I'm good with it. The question of now where you're going to come in and say, hey, now the impact that it has on the rest of your bullpen, I hear you. But you didn't have to use anybody today that wasn't available. You didn't have to really stretch it out today. There are bigger issues. The bigger issues are they don't have good pitchers. They don't. And this is what happens when you can't get innings out of those guys is you put yourself in that spot. It would have been really nice today on a day where the Orioles scored runs for your starting pitcher to have given you 6+. And yes, from a pitch, could you say maybe we'll live with it? Maybe the value of even if he gives up a couple runs here is the extra inning helps us. But you got another off day tomorrow. So it's hard for me to get worked up on bullpen usage when you've played 2 baseball games in the span of 5 days.
And I'm not worked up over bullpen usage per se. Because you're going to have to use your bullpen. I agree that Kate Povich doesn't need to come back out after the fifth inning, but at 76 pitches, and look, you can also say, hindsight being 2020, well, George Springer hurt himself. Povich probably would have struck him out too. Povich isn't throwing 98 at the top of the
Not
zone
at all.
to get the swing that George Springer put on that ball that Baker threw to hurt himself to begin with. So that probably doesn't happen. And look, I can be realistic enough to say, look, it's George Springer's hitting 400 this year. He's off to a hot start. You have a lefty facing a righty who's a young guy who's been wiggling in and out of trouble all season. You got to get somebody else. And Brian Baker's been your most dominant reliever to date. I understand the move. I just didn't like it in the moment because I also think that you have to do right by your starting pitcher for a morale type of thing.
And this is where you and I will always separate. I have so like there is no win stat. Like if anybody who still references wins in 2025, I just can't. There is no such thing as a win any longer. It doesn't exist for anyone but someone who still reads a newspaper. So that part of it, like again, talking about the innings, the value of that, or trading off, is it better for us, even if this doesn't work out, to just get more innings out of a starter? I'll listen to that conversation eternally. But I can never engage in a conversation about a win for a pitcher in a baseball game because it's just meaningless.
Well, yeah. If Felix Hernandez won a Cy Young in a year, he won 13 games. I don't think that the win stat is necessarily important for. I think it matters to a pitcher to a certain extent, and I think it absolutely matters when you go to arbitration. Not that Kate Povich is near arbitration, but they bring up wins in arbitration. Ask Corbin Burns about whether or not they brought up wins in arbitration.
They bring up things they can try to bring up, but they know better. Like they're not winning a case over wins because that we can have this, right? And they have the same conversation come up, and when you bring it up, the other side laughs about it, and we all know wins are meaningless. They're just meaningless statistics, and for some reason we still. I don't know why they still exist. I don't know why we still have it in baseball when we know that it's an utterly and completely meaningless statistic because it tells you nothing about what actually happened in the game. It's laughable that we continue to try, that somehow we reward someone with a statistic. If you give up 6 runs but happen to go over 5 innings and your team scores 10, it's laughable that we continue to discuss it. Like it's just not a statistic that can impact any thought that you ever have about a baseball game.
Or you can go 7 innings, give up 2 runs, and your team doesn't score, or your bullpen gives up 8 runs, and you don't get the win there. I do think wins matter because I do think that in order to get a bunch of wins, 15, 16, 20 wins, you have to be a good pitcher to do that. You don't. I mean,
other than what Bartolo Colon the one year where he won the Cy Young Award. I mean, like
Rick Helling won 20 games one year where his ERA was like 4.90. So I get that, but that was also in the heart of the steroid era. But I do think that you have to have some kind of pitchability to win a bunch of baseball games. I think that because it means that you're getting deep in the games too to give your team a chance to win. But we could talk about that for 10 more minutes, and we don't need to do that. So, but here's my question for you, Glenn. Yes, the Orioles scored 5 runs yesterday, but they only did it on 5 hits. They scored 6 runs today, so it seems odd to bring it up. But the fact of the matter is, as bad as the pitching has been, the Orioles' biggest bugaboo this year has been the fact that they are very inconsistent. On offense. More than half of their games coming into the weekend, they had scored 3 runs or less. They've been shut out twice. Today, they put up 6 runs. They scored in 4 of the first 5 innings, and then they got 1 hit after the 6th inning. Now, look, that's 4 innings worth of baseball, but they got 1 hit after that. They didn't score another run. They had a runner on second to start the 10th. They got him over, could not get him in.
No, they had a runner on second and the 9th and couldn't get him in.
Yeah, so the question becomes, is the pitching the bigger issue for this team, or is it the offense? Because
it's definitely still the pitching. Like, and this is the difficult way because what you're saying is 100% correct, right? But there's genuine reason to believe that, like, you can get more out of the group that you have offensively than there is to believe you can get more. The flip side is your hope that you're going to get pitchers back and that can solve it. And again, it's possible, right? It's possible that Zach Eflin's timeline is going to be exactly what we think it's going to be coming out of the shutdown, that Grayson Rodriguez is not far behind him, and that those guys, Zach Eflin will come back and look exactly like he did ever since he arrived in Baltimore, and Grayson Rodriguez will be a fairly strong version of Grayson Rodriguez. And if that happens, then you're in a different place. And obviously, if Kyle Bradish is added to it, then you're in really, I don't want to say really good shape, but you're in much better shape if all
Sure.
those things fall in line. But there's a lot of ifs involved with that.
Mhm.
Right now, they have to continue to put Charlie Morton out there every fifth game. Until that goes away, until it's Charlie Morton, and there are things that I like about Sagano. I think that maybe he's going to become a pitcher at some point. Like Sagano and Povich are both guys that you could squint and say you could deal with them at the back end of your rotation. The problem is that's
Mhm.
what you thought Dean Kramer was. He hasn't even been that so far this season. At his best, he's a guy that you can deal with at the back of your rotation. And you have to continue to putting those guys out there every fifth day, and you're in trouble. The offense absolutely has to be more consistent, no question. You hope
Yeah.
that Gunnar Henderson found a little life this weekend and that'll carry over and that he'll continue to be like Gunnar Henderson. But everyone else, it's too much of we think these guys are good, but they're not performing at the level that they need to be performing at, whether it's Jackson Holiday or even Ryan O'Hearn, who like I know is a professional hitter, but you look at it and you say, is he a different? Why is he in the middle of an order right now? Like
Mhm.
what really does he do that makes him a middle of the order type of hitter? I think he's a professional baseball player. He's I don't know for some reason Lyle Overbay is the name that comes to mind, right? Like you can do this for a living. There's no doubt to me that you are a capable professional baseball player, but are you a middle of the order hitter on a good baseball team? I don't know that I'm seeing that. I get everything you're saying. They need to be more consistent. They have to be more consistent, but there's a better reason to think they can than the current group of five starting pitchers. There's just no reason to think that this group can do better than what it is that they're doing right now.
Well, and
Man, I guess it's
let's
four because we don't even know who the fifth guy will be next weekend.
right, and you're looking at this rotation, and you're seeing how many guys are hurt, how many guys should be at the back end of the rotation now, expected to be 1 and 2 and 3 starters, and the ERAs are staggering, the WHIPs are staggering, the fact that 2/5 year rotation are tied for the league lead in runs allowed, and you're looking at this rotation, and there's no way that the Orioles can continue with the way the rotation is and expect to be a playoff team. I don't think they can expect to be a 500 ball club
Mm-hmm.
with the way the rotation is going. With that in mind, we've been hearing about this window, this young talent, and how we want to build sustainable winning for a long period of time. Well, you're in what is this the third year now of really getting beyond the rebuild. You can count 2022, but it took a 10-game winning streak in the middle of the season for that team to finish above 500. You look at 2023, 2024, 2025 should be the year where the Orioles are taking that next big step and being considered dangerous World Series contenders. And they've taken a step back because of the ineffectiveness and the inability to correctly add to the team in the offseason from a starting pitching standpoint. I'm telling you right now, Glenn, they have to make a trade or two to get some pitching in this rotation, and I don't think they can wait to the deadline. I think that's too late.
I don't disagree with you, Paul. I don't know, of the guys that we thought were available before the season, who's still available right now, right? Is Alcantara still available right now because the Marlins just they're never really in it. Everybody's always available. I don't think Cease is available right now. I think once he got to the start of the season, the Padres were going to load up and go try to win the NL West. And
Mm-hmm.
as crazy as we think it is, I mean, the Dodgers lost by 1,000 runs last night. So maybe they're not as impenetrable as we believe them to be. So I think that one probably is off the list for now. And I think that's kind of the problem of trying to be aggressive before the deadline is who's really willing to trade starting pitching. Like what
Mm-hmm.
are the Mariners still in a place where they're so desperate for offense that you can make a move there? Or is it more you can make that move if you're willing to overpay? It's very tough for me. Like that needed to happen in the offseason. And now I think you really need to get the market a little bit more flooded. I think there need to be more teams that know definitively that they're out of it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's going to take a little while. I mean, look, they put themselves in this position, and they deserve. I'm not going to shake it. They deserve every ounce of criticism they've gotten. Like, the column that Ken Rosenthal wrote for The Athletic is 1,000% on point. Like, the idea that it was Corbin Burns or bust and trying to defend it. Well, they did spend money. They went and got Morton and Sagan. Like, we can't do that. We can't pretend like these guys hadn't higher upside than they did. They didn't. You were hoping to find back end of the rotation pitchers. And if you thought that it was more than that, then we got to really have a question about whether or not Mike Elias can identify talent. Like, that's the best that you could do from that group, was perhaps they could be back of the rotation guys. Morton hasn't been that. Morton, I mean, just doesn't look like he can do this for a living anymore. And that happens to everybody. You know, you reach a point where it's just over, and it's starting to look like, much like with Craig Kimbrell a year ago, it's starting to look like for Charlie Morton, it's just over, and that happens. So the Pythagorean model being what it is, and convincing you that this player at this price is a greater value, it's the type of thing that I have no doubt is really cool when you're hanging out with other GMs and having a beer, and somebody says, boy, you found that guy at that. It's super cool, but it is absolutely not helping this baseball team, and they're in real trouble because of it. Like, this is it. I don't want to say they're a bad baseball team, because it's still too early to do that. Like, we have to be. You can't make that proclamation until Memorial Day at the earliest, but they got an awful lot of problems, man. And yeah, I think they should be aggressive for pitching, and I just don't know what is actually available in the first month of the season. I don't know what your options are.
So I'll tell you that when they went out and they signed Sagano, and then they went out and they signed Charlie Morton, my reaction to that was how I feel now, which is a 35-year-old rookie and a 41-year-old who was contemplating retirement. Like, what are we doing here? But then I turned into 16 and 17-year-old Paul Valley, who tried to convince himself that the rotation led by Rodrigo Lopez and an offense led by an over-the-hill Jeff Conine was somehow going to be capable of playing winning baseball. And that's what I turned back into. I find a way to cope and convince myself that these.
It's
guys
also the start. The start of the season does that to you, right? Like, nobody ever wants to go into the start of the season like really trying to dwell on the negatives. It's and I did the exact same thing. Like, look, they still should score enough runs, and they still should be all right. But like, we were always doing a bit when we were pretending like the rotation wasn't a massive problem, or that somehow multiple lottery tickets were going to pan out. I get it. There's a history of taking lottery tickets, and every now and then one of them pans out in a way that you did not expect them to pan out. For a little while, Albert Suarez panned out last year, and then we remembered Albert Suarez really isn't a major league starter either, right? Like, every now and then something pans out. Miguel Gonzalez panned out. But thinking that you were going to have three of them all pan out,
right? Plus another 35-year-old back-end reliever, who has knee surgery, while the guy
that's tough. That is tough, right?
The guy who didn't sign because he didn't pass a physical just has 2 saves against you.
Yep, and gave you a nice little wave, and I don't blame him, right? Like, if I were Jeff Hoffman, I'd be just as pissed off about that. I would 100% have it out for the Orioles the way that he clearly does. And, you know, he deserves credit. He battled in 2 innings with runners in scoring position and got the job done. And yeah, to your point, at the moment, it's really hard to not think about it and say, boy, kind of would rather have that guy on the roster at the moment.
And look, it's still so early. And like you said, you could get Eflin and Bradish and Rodriguez and Kittredge and Tyler Wells back and really and have the best record in the American League in the second half of the year. That very well could happen. It also very well could not happen. And if you're 15 games below 500 by the time you get to the point where those guys are coming back, it doesn't really matter. Right. And then you look at it. And one of the reasons, like you said, that we were able to convince ourselves that it could still be a good year is because the offense was expected to be great. And they have so much talent on this team that the offense should be a hell of a lot better than it's been to this point. I look at this team and I see a team that has Jackson Holliday and Gunnar Henderson and Jordan Westberg and Adley Rutschman. And I'm like, how are they not better? The team is 4th in Major League Baseball in barrels per plate appearance, third in hard hit percentage per swing, third in hard hit percentage per batted ball. They're fourth in average exit velocity. Gunnar Henderson has 11 of 17 batted balls after his first at bat today at over 100 miles an hour, and he leads the majors with a 99.5% at point 5 mile per hour average exit velocity. Yet the batting average on balls in play is 282. The launch angle is 11th. The launch angle sweet spot percentage is 13th. So does this suggest to you, Glenn, that the
Bad.
team they're just hidden into
Yeah,
bad luck?
bad luck, right? Like it's the eternal thing that you want to say in this spot. Maybe, Paul, right? Like maybe. And that's why I can't say the offense is a bigger concern than the pitching is because, again, I have reason to believe that things can get better. But there are still some construction problems. There is still a little bit of a lot of the same, right? Like they
Mm-hmm.
still, even in going out and getting some right-handed bats, those aren't right-handed bats that you really want in the lineup. Like we all feel the exact same way when Ramon Laureano is out there. We just
Mm-hmm.
we're hard pressed to believe that it's going to make a difference. Um, you still have a lot of the same, and not a lot of guys that are creating. God bless Cedric Mullins, right? Like God bless that dude for everything that he's done to start the season because it could definitely be worse than it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a real like issue that they had in roster construction. Um, I just don't see it with Tyler. I think Tyler O'Neill is what he is, and the Orioles needed something that isn't Tyler O'Neill.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of the problem that I have there. And I think the 10th inning is an example of that. Like he's gonna strike out, he's gonna hit home runs, and they kind of needed something a little bit more than that. I get it. Anthony Santander hit a lot of home runs last year, but he was a bit better than just he's going to strike out or he's going to get hit home runs. And you need guys that are going to be a little bit more than that. Um, I am still optimistic. I still think that there is a better version of Jackson Holiday that we are going to see. I think that's the one where you really like that ball that he crushed in the 8th inning.
Mm-hmm.
You see it. You see that there's value there, and that he's going to be a better baseball player. And I think that's going to help them improve. But I don't think you just immediately say it's all bad luck and it's definitely going to turn around. I think we all see that they're being a little bit too aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
and we all think they need to be working appearances a little bit better and a little bit more. And I think that's been disappointing because we 2 to 3 years ago kind of fell in love with that being part of how this was going to go. Was
Mm-hmm.
that we were going to see just somebody working at bat and how that was going to change the course of a game. And
Right.
we don't see that really this season. We see the same team that appears to be pressing and thinking they have to swing early, and they end up falling behind in counts. I know that's a long way of answering that, Paul, but like, yeah, I think that there's better luck coming, but I don't know that I can just say it's all bad luck and this is definitely going to be a perfect offense for the rest of the season.
Well, I've been screaming from a mountaintop for about 3 or 4 off seasons now that this team needs a true middle of the order presence that all pitchers fear, and they don't have that. The biggest bat that pitchers fear in this lineup is Gunnar Henderson, and rightfully so. But he hits leadoff for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like I get it. Shohei Ohtani hits leadoff for the Dodgers, but they also have Mookie Betts,
Freddie
and Freddie
Freeman,
Freeman.
right?
Yeah. Like they have those guys. The Orioles have a bunch of really good players, but they don't have Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani or Pete Alonso. They don't have that guy that you have to be careful with. Pitchers know that they can throw a breaking ball in the dirt to Ryan Mountcastle and he's gonna chase it. They know they can throw 98 at the top of the zone to Tyler O'Neill and he's gonna chase it and not catch up to it. There's not that presence. Do the Orioles, as much as they need to trade for a starting pitcher or maybe another relief pitcher or both, do they need to make a trade to get that veteran middle of the order presence? Because I'll tell you right now, beyond that middle of the order presence, they're missing a veteran presence in general. They don't have that guy on this roster that can take command of that team in that clubhouse, in my opinion. I saw a glimpse of it with Adley on that yesterday.
Yeah.
But it ain't there yet.
Well, I mean, Adley's still kind of one of the guys, right? He's just sort of like, this is their kind of frat house group, and it's hard, I think, for any of them to separate themselves and feel like they are the individual leaders. Cedric, for all the value he brings as a baseball player, it's just not. He's not Adam Jones in that way. He's never been the voice guy. I do
Mhm.
think that we started to see a year ago that there was more of that value from Anthony Santander than I think we realized there was. I think that in a lot of places we believe that like kind of the Latin players separate themselves and they
Mhm.
have their own thing. And I think we saw more and more last year that Santander, his while he's considered immensely valuable with young Latin players, I think we saw more of the value that he had for the entirety of the team. But I think you're right. Like they just don't have that guy who is sort of the dean and everybody sort of lives when he speaks. There's a little bit of fear of God that comes from it. I don't think that player exists on this team.
Yeah, and you can tell. You can just tell in the way that they play, in the body language, and like you said, it's a perfect way to put it. Because for me, I was just like Gunner's just kind of like that guy. He's
Yeah.
like, let's go fishing, let's build some Legos, and let's hit baseballs hard. But it's really that we're all boys. We're gonna
Mm-hmm.
rent a house together in spring training and live together, and then go fishing afterwards and play some golf. There's nobody that's gonna come and take control of the team, and in that sense, do you believe that it has as much to do with anything else that Kyle Gibson was a guy that they brought in after the
It's
Grayson
interesting.
Rodriguez injury? He
Yeah,
filled
he
that role
certainly
again.
was a guy they all respected. I mean, they really did all respect Kyle Gibson, and you saw how involved they got with his events and the things that he was doing around town. And even after he left, like they carried on some of that because of the respect they had for Kyle Gibson. Maybe, right? Like maybe Paul, but I still think it's tough.
Mhm.
I still think you need a position player, and someone who's in the lineup every
Mhm.
day to be that guy. And look, this is where the conversation, as much as we can talk about, are the Blue Jays really going to get $50 million a year worth of value out of Vladimir Guerrero? I don't know. I don't. I couldn't tell you that. I think from a baseball standpoint, it's easy to say like no, that you can't get that out of Vladimir Guerrero, right? He doesn't play a position really. Like they put him over there, but as we were reminded today, he's not good at it, right? Like he's just over there. He's not a defensive player. He's a bat, and that's what he is. Can you really get $50 million worth of value out of a bat? Probably not. But then there's two additional layers to it. Does the fact that he's making $50 million immediately say to everyone else, this is the guy that you're taking this is the guy? And has he earned that?
Mhm.
And I do wonder if that's something that this baseball team, while we all know the realities of the scenarios with the Boris guys and Adley Rutschman already making money in arbitration and being closer to free agency at this point, that there might be something to be said for just giving someone a contract beyond next year. Like that's the reality of where we
Yeah.
are. Might go do wonders for saying, hey, by the way, this is the guy now. Like this is who it is
Mhm.
that's going to be the leader of this team. And I get that it's complicated and it's not as easy as just saying, hey, hand some money to somebody. I know I'm oversimplifying the conversation, but I do think there's a value that comes from that goes beyond just whatever the baseball value is.
Yeah. So, and let me ask you this, because you just brought it up a little bit there. With regards to the short contracts, this regime, Mike Elias, Brandon Hyde. I've been leading the charge against Brandon
Mm-hmm.
Hyde for now 4 seasons. I don't need to get into that conversation. It's well documented
Mm-hmm.
how I feel about him as a manager. Mike Elias, I have had faith in Mike Elias since day one. There was a point where everything he said he was going to do in his introductory press conference, every box he was going to check, he checked them, and basically in order. We've gotten to the point now where it's his job to add the right players to a team that needs to be trying to win championships, not just trying to be good enough to get back into the playoffs. They need to be trying to win championships. You give David Rubenstein the benefit of the doubt, his first full off season as the owner of the ball club, that he's going to let his baseball people do their job and he's going to stay out of it. Right? The cries and the criticism from the fan base is getting
Sure.
louder with each loss. Right? So at what point does the message from the manager and the moves from the general manager become stale and it's time to make a move?
Yeah.
And is that thing
Well,
getting
it's
closer and
it's certainly
closer?
getting closer. Again, where you and I separate is the individual things. Like as I've said to you before, if Mike Elias is in charge of this team and they fire Brandon Hyde, the next manager is going to be expected to make the same types of decisions. Like this is I've been through this a few times. People think I'm saying that like he's calling down to the dugout and saying here's who you're going to put in to hit in this situation. It's not that. But they as an organization
Right.
have the data that they care about most significantly. And whoever the manager of this baseball team is going to be, the expectation is going to be that you are going to make your decisions based on the data they believe is most significant. So I have not
Mm-hmm.
been on the Brandon Hyde path because to me, Brandon Hyde is just a reflection of the organization. If you like Mike Elias, then the manager is going to be a reflection of Mike Elias, whether it's Brandon Hyde or not. My point about Brandon Hyde is
Mm-hmm.
it really does come down to wins and losses. And when you consider their post June 22nd or June 20th record from last year, where they were 4 games under 500 for the rest of the season, and then you add in this, then wins and losses are a factor. They are. And
Mm-hmm.
also it's a factor of there's only one thing you can do to try to shake things up. Now, the date, as I said before, you don't do that before Memorial Day. Like it's you just
Right.
like it doesn't happen that way. And I know everybody brings up the Joe Girardi thing, and I'm not saying that there aren't it's never happened or wildly unprecedented, but we always try to cling to one thing and say this is definitive proof. And I don't even remember off the top of my head what the date was for Joe Girardi a couple years ago. But
I think it was. I think
yeah,
it was in June. I
yeah,
believe it was after Memorial Day, but it was. They were like 26
yes.
and 33 or
Memorial
something like
Day
that.
is the first time that I believe you can fairly look at a baseball team and say, we've got a sample size. So to
Mm-hmm.
me, any decision about Brandon Hyde would have to be record related and it would come after Memorial Day. And maybe not that long after Memorial Day, right? If this team is really mired in this just lethargic funk, if the last couple days are not a sign of the offense coming together and it's going to continue to be this inconsistent, then I would have no problem with that
Mm-hmm.
decision coming, pretty shortly after Memorial Day if that's where they are. But to the point, my bigger concern is now I don't really know how to judge Brandon Hyde on this group, right? I don't think that this is a good baseball team. I I
Mm-hmm.
today I don't think it's a good baseball team. I don't think the manager is getting in their way. I don't think they have pitching. I I I don't know
Right.
how to judge him on that. So the bigger point to me is exactly I don't know where I am with Mike Elias. When you were doing the show with me, I remember we would have this conversation where somebody would ask what I think of Mike Elias, and I would just say, I don't know. Like I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I know he can tear it down really well. But I have no idea if Mike Elias is capable of building up a World Series winner. And that was at the time where we thought you had to win even more so in the margins because you weren't going to be able to spend money under the previous ownership. So everything needed to be a hit, right? Like you couldn't miss on anything.
Sure.
Now, to the point, you would like to think that under this ownership that there will be more of a willingness to invest and to spend. That still needs to be proven moving forward, but you'd like to hope that that's going to be the case. And so you shouldn't need to just hit on everything. There should be more margin for error, but there's at the moment a fair bit of error. Like there just is.
Yeah.
They still haven't drafted and developed a pitcher. Like it hasn't happened. And they would say they haven't really tried as a defense, but like you can't have it both ways. You can't continuously refuse to draft and
Right.
develop pitchers and then say we can't swim in the highest waters of pitchers. You got to do one or the other at some point. Like I'm
Right.
an idiot and I can say that. You can't just keep saying that well you can't draft pitchers because it's too volatile and you can't sign pitchers because it's too volatile. You have to have pitchers. Like you have to, one way or the other.
Right.
They've got to
Right.
exist. And Grayson Rodriguez you inherited and we'll see.
Kyle
Correct.
Bradish, you
And
traded
by the way,
for.
if that's how you get your
Yeah.
pitchers, fine. Fine, right? But you got to get
Mm-hmm.
more of them. And you're running out of that in order to be able to do it. So the Zach Eflin one we can't ignore. Like I get it. I had this conversation with my buddy Ken Wyman, who I love, and like when we harp on all of the failures of Mike Elias at the trade deadline and in the offseason, we're right. The point is correct, but we can't ignore the Zach Eflin thing was a grand slam. I mean, it was as good of a
Yeah.
trade as has been made in the last year or so. It was that good, but that was the one. Like, that's the problem. That's the one
Mhm.
that has worked out. It's got to be more than that.
Yeah. Well, and even then, getting Zach Eflin, if you look at Zach Eflin's career, they were asking him to do something this year
Yeah,
that he's
sure.
never
Yeah,
done in
he's not
his
right.
career. And that's to make
Mhm.
28 starts or more in 3 consecutive seasons. He could still do that, but he would have to get back to the
Yeah,
game quickly in order to be able to do that. And the fact remains that Grayson Rodriguez has been hurt 2 out of his three big league seasons, right? Zach Eflin has a history of being hurt. Um, then you have how many guys did you lose to Tommy John surgery last year? Now you're looking at the rest of this team, all the players that are going down. You have 8 pitchers on the injured list. You have a bunch of other guys like a Samuel Basayo who got hurt. You have Trevor Rogers dislocated the knee, Chase McDermott with the lat strain. At what point do you have to look in the mirror with all the injuries that continue to
yeah,
happen to the ball
that's
club?
tough.
It's just like
Right.
when the Ravens would have 15 to 20 guys on IR every year from 2015 through 2015, 16, and 17. And then again in
I
21.
know exactly what you're asking, and I ask it to other people that I think are more intelligent. Not no offense, that I think like know the inner workings of this, and I
Hmm.
continue to get back more of a we don't have an answer. That it's such an epidemic throughout baseball. Like, I keep looking for the team that doesn't go through this, right? Like, and maybe to the point,
Hmm.
it's why Corbin Burns is worth more than any pitcher in the entire sport, because this is the one thing you know
Right.
about Corbin Burns is he's not going to get hurt. He might not be perfect, but he ain't going to get hurt. And so maybe it was worth
Hmm.
going. Yeah, if he really wanted to offer $45 million a year, maybe it was worth 6 years and $45 million a year, because Corbin Burns is a unicorn when it comes to this. I understand exactly how you and so many others feel, but the more I talk to people throughout the sport, it really is, we're all guessing right now. None of us actually
Yeah.
has an answer as to how to prevent these guys from getting hurt. And I know we don't like the idea of them tinkering with someone's pitches when they're I keep trying to run this up, hoping that I can get, again, someone smarter than me to say, yeah, this is a real problem with what they're doing there. And I have not gotten it from anyone in baseball. That have all just sort of said that we're all trying to figure it out right now, and none of us can.
Well, and to be fair to baseball players across the sport, this is the longest sports season of all the
Hmm.
professional sports. It's the only sport where they play every single day. It's 162 games in 180 days. They start ramping up baseball activities basically as soon as the new year starts, and they don't. So a lot of these guys don't stop playing till November. So you get 2 months where you're not doing anything baseball related, maybe. So I get it. You're constantly putting
And
torque
violence,
and
yeah.
twist and force and violence on your body for 10 out of 12 months. I understand. I've played in baseball tournaments where we played 6 games in 4 days, and I felt like my legs were cement by game four. So like I'm not a professional athlete, so like it's not really, I guess, a fair comparison. But you multiply that out 20 times over, you're still a human being with a human body. So there is to be slack given there. It's just confounding to me that this team is just so hurt. And last year, and it makes it even that much more of an anomaly in 2023 when they just didn't get hurt.
Correct.
Nobody was hurt
Incredibly
in
good luck.
2023.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, and so like that just doesn't seem to happen. But at some point when you're watching pitcher after pitcher after pitcher go down, and it keeps being kind of the same thing,
Yep.
the lat strain. You saw it with Grayson, with Eflin, with McDermott. You see it with Gunner. It happened with Gunner last year too. It does make you raise
The
at least
problem with the
raise
idea
an
that you raise an
eyebrow
eyebrow,
to
I
it.
just, and again, asking everybody, it just doesn't seem unique, right? Like, it just seems like it
Yeah.
is, and to the point, is it always lat strains? No. Um, I know what Frankie Montas was a lat strain, right? Like, it's not as if
Hmm.
this is the only organization going through lat strains, but yeah, I get it, I do.
And so, Glenn, before we let you go, actually, I do have one
All
one
right.
random question for you before I ask the final question. Everybody seems so in a hurry to trade Ryan Mountcastle. To me, he's your best defensive first baseman. You need good right-handed bats, and yeah, maybe the power is
Yeah.
sapped from what it was when he first came up, but he still puts the bat on the ball a fair amount, and he can drive the ball to all fields. Why is everybody in such a hurry to trade him, especially when you don't know what you're going to
And
get
I
out
think
of
that's
Kobe
the
Mayo at the
interesting
big league
part,
level?
right? Like, if you were so certain that Kobe Mayo has to be here, then why weren't you doing that in the offseason, right? Like, that's the part that I think
Mhm.
is strange to me is the timing. In the offseason, I can make it make sense. I can. Like, if you just say, come hell or high
Mhm.
water, we're committed. We got to stop this game where we're trying to have Kobe Mayo work at third base. We know he's not a third baseman, he's a first baseman. We want to we're going to have him be the primary guy. That makes some sense. Once the season begins, I, depth is now your strength. What are you if there was somebody that was willing to offer you something of significance for Ryan Mountcastle, by all means. But that if there was somebody offering something of significance, that trade would have happened by now.
Sure.
Trading Ryan
Sure.
Mountcastle for the sake of trading him is bizarre. I I feel this way. I maybe
Mhm.
part of it is I get emotionally attached. Like, I am still a fan, and I think it is different. I know you're a dad now, and I think that
I
you're going to
understand.
understand this more and more. Like, the attachment that my kids feel to certain players and how it's made them fall in love with baseball. It's a special thing. But I feel this when everybody like just sort of says, "Well, you can't sign Cedric Mullins to an extension." Why not? Like, what? Because why? Because Colton Cowser has to be your center fielder? Like, I like Colton Cowser. I think he's going to be a baseball player, but right now, Colton Cowser is a guy who's had a month.
Mhm.
That's what he's done. He's had
I
a
agree.
month
I agree.
of being a really good baseball player. You have to move on from Cedric Mullins to make sure Colton Cowser is your center fielder.
But I
Like,
think people are saying that also because you have
Enrique
two first
Bradfield.
round Bradfield and you have Vance Honeycutt
I think
and
Honeycutt
Dylan Beavers.
Honeycutt's such a wild card that like I
Yeah.
can't like. But why can't the answer be that those are the guys that you're trying to use in order to go get baseball players? Because Cedric Mullins is an answer, and I know that everybody always says the same things. Well, he gets hurt a lot, and when he gets hurt, he doesn't typically come back being the same guy. I get that, I do, and I wouldn't suggest if I thought the market was set for Cedric Mullins was $25 million a year, of course. Like, you're not doing that. But I don't think that's what the market is for Cedric Mullins in his 30s.
Mhm.
I'm flummoxed by the idea that you have to move on from him. Um, I don't think you have to move on from Mountcastle either, but I do still think that you can't. I feel a little bit differently about that. There's only so many places in your order that you can put a bopper, and first
Mhm.
base is one of those spots. And if you're not really a 35 plus home run guy, a true bopper, then there might be a bit of an opportunity cost for me there if you're committing to Ryan Mountcastle. But in season,
Mhm.
if you were doing this, you do it before the year begins and you just commit. Kobe Mayo's the guy. We'll play O'Hearn a little bit more at first base. We'll try to do some different things to make sure Heston Kjerstad's in the lineup every day to try to get those answers. But I don't get it in season unless there is a bigger offer for Mountcastle on the table somewhere than I could possibly fathom there would be. I think most organizations, it's like when we went through this with Trey Mancini. You were essentially going to trade Trey Mancini just for the sake of trading Trey Mancini because every team in baseball believes they have a Ryan Mountcastle. They believe they have a Trey Mancini.
Mhm.
We keep holding up the Mariners as like they've just got to be so desperate for offense that they'll take your lesser than, but like even they think they have someone in their system that would be Ryan Mountcastle. These guys are prevalent throughout baseball. So
Mhm.
I don't get the timing of it and Bob Nightingale's report. I just that feels very strange to me that you just be openly looking to move Mountcastle in the middle of the year for the sake of moving.
Yeah, and the Nightingale report. I mean, how does that affect the player's mindset? The Ryan
No,
Mountcastle, he's on a team with all of his best buddies, and now all of a sudden he learns that he's
I
part
mean,
of trade
could
talks.
he just be gone tomorrow? Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
it certainly can't help. There's no look. There's always the opinion that some people have that maybe that's what fires you up. Like, I'm going to show you, and I, everybody's different in that way. But I don't think it's fair to him by any stretch of the imagination. I wouldn't care about that if it made sense, right? Like, I just don't
Mhm.
think it makes sense right now in the middle of the season to be looking to trade Ryan Mountcastle. You move the wall back. You got to give him more of an opportunity to. I don't get it, Paul. I don't get it.
All right. Final question for you. I already know the answer. I already know
Mm-hmm.
your answer, but there's a follow up to it.
Okay.
In Glenn Clark's heart of hearts, does he believe that the Orioles in 2025 are a playoff team? And if they are not, do Mike Elias and Brandon Hyde survive the season?
That's a good.
Beyond the
That's a
season.
good question. In my heart of hearts, I'm not ready to say no yet. I guess is what I would say. Before the season, I thought they were, and I'm not ready to overreact to this and say no. I'm still inclined to believe that there's enough here to get it figured out. And also looking around the American League, like the Blue Jays are one of those teams you're going to compete with. I still think the Orioles are better than the Blue Jays. I do,
I do
but
too.
I get where we're squinting, and it's kind of tough to say that definitively. But I do still think they're better than the Blue Jays. So it's a tepid yes, but it's a yes. The follow up is no. I do think that if they miss the playoffs, at least Brandon Hyde is gone. I think the other one really comes down to as much David Rubenstein. I think Mike Arrighetti is strong in this conversation. What their feelings are about, do they have someone else in mind? Is there someone that they know of who's in their ear, outside of the organization, that is pitching them on, I know exactly how to go from where you are to winning a World Series. I think there's trouble. I don't know that I can commit to. Like, it was really interesting how immediately committed David Rubenstein was to Mike Elias, to the point where, like he said, and in our print issue of Press Box where we had the Q&A with David Rubenstein, he said, "Look, I'm talking to him every day. Every day he's involved, but he is defaulting to Mike Elias." And this is a group of really successful people. I think if there's a real dip this year, that defaulting to it becomes tougher to do.
And how loud is Cal's voice in all this? 'Cause I don't think it's as loud as people think it is.
I don't think it's I don't think he wants it to be loud either, to be truthful. I don't think this is a when I say I don't think it's loud, I don't think that's because they're like blocking him out or saying Cal, pipe down. I don't think that's what he's interested in
Sure.
this role.
Sure.
I think that he's very much an all or nothing. Like, either I'm running things or I'm not involved. I don't think he has the ability to be in between those two
Sure.
things. I think right now he likes the idea, hey, run things by me about, the brand, about the Orioles, about the community, about business. I think he's happy to do those things. But I don't think I think Cal would say, and he's said this to me a number of times personally. If I'm gonna have a job like that, I've got to be the guy. I've got to be the one. I need to make the decisions. So I don't think Cal would even be interested in being like third fiddle in this process whatsoever.
And this is the point of why I was asking. Cal's a 1% owner. I don't think he's saying much. That
Yep.
comes from my friend Zach Moore,
Yep.
and that's exactly why I asked. And I agree with you, Glenn. Everything that we
I
know
do
about
I think
Ken,
some people would
Cal,
say you've got Cal Ripken at your disposal. You should use him more than that. Like,
Mhm.
have him be more involved. And I would hear that thought process.
Yes,
I just, knowing what I know of Cal, and I'm not trying to pretend like we're close friends, but one of the blessings of my life is that I've had the great fortune of having hundreds of conversations with Cal Ripken. If you had told that to 12-year-old Glenn Clark, he would have peed himself, right? But like, one of the things that I've taken from those conversations is Cal is it's not, there can't be in the middle. It's I'm either all or nothing. I'm either running it or I'm not.
yeah.
And so I just don't think that he would be interested in that.
All right, Glenn. You were only supposed to give me a half an hour. You gave me 50 minutes. I appreciate
Buddy,
you. Thank you so
anything
much for
anything for
hopping on.
you. I love you, pal.
I love you too, man. Thank you. What can we plug for you before you get out of here?
Just back to Glenn Clark Radio tomorrow, 10 to noon. If you missed Corbin Burns this week, that was really great. I really appreciated Corbin. I know he did Ryan Ripken's show as well, but
Mhm.
Like, he didn't have to do it. That's Corbin Burns, man. Like,
Yeah,
he doesn't
that's a
have
great
to.
cat.
He does
Great
not
cat.
have to do that stuff. But we had a brief conversation before we went on the air, and he told me why. And he's he's a special person. Like, as he's a really unique human being. So it was good stuff. Whether you're still hurt by it or not, I understand how you feel, but I think all of us that are parents understand why it was that he was really hell bent about being in Arizona and why things are different for him. But I really appreciate it. If you missed it, you can go check that out in the archives. That was a really tremendous conversation we had last week.
I hate going into the restaurant for an evening to work when my daughter's at home with my
Yeah,
wife.
man.
I can't imagine being away from her for 6 months out of the 8 months out
I,
of the
I,
year.
I'll give you. I'm going to be stepping back from the 105.7 show a little bit. I'm not. Like, I'm not quitting 105.7 the fan. I'm just going to be stepping back a little bit, and there's things that my kid's baseball season's going on right now. I want to be involved,
Right.
and I fully and completely understand every single one of those thoughts. Like, I completely get why it was going to have to be dramatically better somewhere else for Corbin Burns to be in that other position. I get it. I completely get it. So yeah, if you missed it, it's worth checking out.
Absolutely. Glenn, love you, brother. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
Thank you, Paul. See you, bud.
All right. See you, man. And that was Glenn Clark from Glenn Clark Radio joining us on the show today. If you missed anything from Glenn Clark Radio this week, including the aforementioned conversation with Corbin Burns, conversations with new Navy basketball coach John Perry, Orioles prospect Cree Willems, and more, you can find them all in the Glenn Clark Radio Week in Review feature at PressBoxOnline.com. And as always, watch or listen to GCR every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. at PressBoxOnline.com/radio or right here on Facebook and YouTube. We are very behind on our read, so I also want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by HelpMyGamblingProblem.org. If you or a loved one has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit HelpMyGamblingProblem.org for free confidential services. That's 1-800-GAMBLER or visit HelpMyGamblingProblem.org for free confidential services. All right, getting around to the rest of the league, or the rest of the American League East in our AL East roundup. The Giants were visiting the New York Yankees this weekend. The Yankees jumped out to an early 3-0 lead with 1 in the first and 2 in the second, but Carlos Rodon giving up a solo shot to Jung-Hoo Lee in the fourth and a 3-run shot to Jung-Hoo Lee in the sixth. And Logan Webb settled in, throwing 3 scoreless, hitless innings after the second inning to pick up the win 5-4. Jazz Chisholm hit his 5th home run to raise his average to 169, and Cody Bellinger went 0 for 4 to drop his average to 196 in the loss. The Red Sox are visiting the Chicago White Sox this weekend, and Trevor Story finished today a triple shy of the cycle, driving in all 3 runs, but it was Garrett Crochet who stole the show again, allowing 1 hit and striking out 11 and 7 1/3 spectacular innings to lead the Red Sox over the White Sox 3-1. And finally, Joe Boyle threw 5 no-hit innings, though he did walk 2 and allow 2 unearned runs. And the Rays got home runs from Yainer Diaz and Junior Caminero, the latter of whom drove in 3 to pace the offense in an 8-3 win over the Braves. Reigning NL Cy Young winner Chris Sale allowed 4 runs, 3 earned on 6 hits and 3 walks in just 4 1/3 innings to raise his season ERA to 6.63. All right. Again, as for today's game, I'm so sorry that you all missed the beginning of the show because for some reason the system just muted me entirely. But the Orioles 6-3 lead in the 8th inning, and you blow that game and you lose 7-6, and it's a microcosm of what's happened to this point this season. They can't win for losing, and it's. They scored 6 runs, but got 1 hit after the 6th inning. They had a runner on second base and less than 2 outs in both the 9th and 10th innings and couldn't drive those runners in. O'Hearn striking out on a high fastball, and then in the 9th with a runner on second base, and then Tyler O'Neill with a runner on third base and 1 out in the 10th inning, striking out on a high fastball. Just not a good day for the pitching. Not a good day at the end of the game. For the offense, just need to eke out 1 run to keep things going or win the game, and could not get it done. But again, this team, 4th in baseball in barrels per plate appearance. In barrels per plate appearance. They have the third highest hit percentage per batted ball. They are fourth in average exit velocity. Gunnar Henderson leads all of Major League Baseball in average exit velocity. It's it's just one of those things where they've been hitting into some bad luck, but I also do believe it has something to do with the approach that the new hitting coach is preaching. I believe it's I feel like it's Cody Ashe. And there was a guy who came over from the Mariners who had the second worst offense in all of baseball next year, last year, only ahead of the Chicago White Sox, and they're preaching line drive, line drive, line drive. Well, this team is hitting a lot of ground balls, grounding into a lot of double plays. They went 10 games and hit 2 home runs. Now they have 4 of the last 2 games, but they hit 2 home runs in a 10-game stretch. The power just hasn't been there despite all the hard hits. It I do believe that the offense will snap out of it and get more consistent. I think this team goes as Gunnar goes. I also think that they really need to switch up what they're doing with their lineup. I don't believe that Adley's a 2-hitter. I don't believe O'Hearn is a 3-hitter. I think that your lineup should be, for now until Holiday becomes your leadoff hitter, Mullins, Westberg, Gunnar, O'Neill as your top 4. And then it becomes Rutschman, Kerstad, Mountcastle, O'Hearn, Holiday. I think that should be your 1 through 9 more often than not. Switch it up a little bit and just see what. But again, it's hard to complain when they scored 11 runs in 2 days and had a 6-3 lead in the ninth. It was the pitching that let them down today. Absolutely. Today's show brought to you by the latest edition of Press Box. These are the final days to pick up the current issue of Press Box with David Rubenstein on the cover. Coming this week, a brand new print issue. On the cover, Luke Jackson looks at the long road back from Tommy John surgery for Orioles closer Felix Bautista, Kyle Bradish, and Tyler Wells. And also inside, learn more about new Maryland basketball coach Buzz Williams from the players that have played for him and much more. You can find the new issue all throughout the region, including at 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can read it all at PressBoxOnline.com. Want to get to some of these comments here from the listeners. The first 10 or so of me being muted. Zach says they let Soto pitch 9 yesterday and extended his outing today. Baker had 13, so Baker could have won again if Soto did. And that's the issue that I have. If Baker threw 13 pitches yesterday, he threw 5 today, and I get it. It's back-to-back days, getting up and throwing in anger. I understand that, but then leave Povich in the game and bring Baker into a clean inning. And as much as Zach and I both have had our gripes with Brian Baker from the past, you can't deny the fact he's been the Orioles' best reliever this season to this point. Could it fall apart? It could, but it hasn't to this point. I'd rather see him come in the 6th inning, pitch the full 6. Then you go Dominguez in the 7th, or Aiken in the 7th, Dominguez in the 8th, and then if you have to use Soto in the 9th or Bowman's been damn good too. It's just the fact that that doesn't mean that I don't think they should have brought Soto in, because Soto's had a good year. He had a bad outing today. Aiken's had a good year, had a bad outing today. It's not that I believe that they shouldn't have brought those guys in. It's just that it's a different game situation if you don't just use Brian Baker for 5 pitches. If you don't pull Cade Povich at 76 pitches with 2 outs in the 5th inning, it's a different game situation. Maybe you use the same pitchers, but maybe the pitches they throw are different. The way that they work a hitter is different because it's a different hitter in general. That's the whole point there. Not that they shouldn't have used Soto. You have to use the guys that you have. It's just what situation are you putting them into? Zach also says, I like that guys still have to give you 5 quality innings to get a win, so it matters for that, but bullpens can screw can screw you. And he meant to say quality and to get a win. I knew what you meant there, Zach. I agree. I will never think that there's so many people that think that batting average is a useless stat, and they think that RBIs are a useless stat and that wins are a useless stat. Well, if you have a higher batting average, your on base percentage and slugging percentage, they matter more. OPS matters more. But I would like to see somebody that Anthony Santander hit 235 last year. His on base percentage was 307. If Anthony Santander hits 270 last year, his on base percentage is probably more like 340, 345. Batting average matters there. You're not going to tell me that a guy that drives in 100 runs, it doesn't matter because it's more dependent on the people that are getting on in front of him. There's still something to being able to put the bat on the ball and get good results in a situation where you need to score runs. There's something to be said for that. Ask Tyler O'Neill and Ryan O'Hearn, who both struck out with the go-ahead and the tying runs on base. In O'Hearn's instance, the winning run. In O'Neill's instance, the tying run in scoring position with less than 2 outs. They both struck out on high fastballs. Ask them how much an RBI matters there. It matters a whole hell of a lot, right? Just like I think that wins matter. I don't think that wins matter in the sense that you could take a guy who has a 4.50 ERA and maybe he wins 15, 16 games. Kyle Gibson had a 4.79 ERA in 2023 and he won 15 games, right? Those 15 wins, they probably don't mean as much as a guy who wins 20 games and has a 3.12 ERA. You still need to pitch deep into a ball game to get a win. Now you could pitch like Kyle Gibson did a couple times into the seventh or eighth inning, giving up 5 or 6 runs, and your team scored 9, and you win that game, and that's a win. I get that. That's not a quality win, but it's a win. But you still gave your team length. You still got deep into the ball game, and you have to go at least 5 innings to qualify for a win. I think that wins matter, just not as much as they used to. When a starting pitcher would go out, give you 45 starts a year, and he would pitch 9 innings in 2/3 of those starts. All right, Daniel Pitts. The Orioles may not be a bad baseball team, but they certainly look like one. Look, they can go. They don't look good. They had an opportunity. Nice comeback win yesterday. They got out to an early lead today, scored a bunch of runs early in the ball game. They were able to take a 6-3 lead into the 8th inning, but then to lose that ball game with a 3-run lead in the 8th, that can't happen, and that can do as much to derail your season as the opposite, where winning yesterday and then winning the ball game again today can get your season back on track. They can have inverse effects and be just as detrimental or positive to the season. You guys know what I'm trying to say. I'm just not great at being articulate about it right now. I don't think the Orioles are a bad team. I think they have a bad starting rotation, and they need to do something sooner rather than later to get it up and running. Pigtown Sports Zach Moore clutch factor would not be rated good for this team if MLB The Show redid the roster. Yeah, you could have said the same thing last year. And it's weird because the Orioles had a lot of pinch hitting success, but that also had a lot to do with the fact that a lot of the pinch hitting success was guys like Austin Hayes and Ryan Mountcastle and Ryan O'Hearn coming off the bench in the games where they didn't start. But yeah, the clutch factor has not been good this year. Lot of double plays from this ball club to this point. Randall, Povich shouldn't be in the position in the first place. I'll say it again. Povich is not ready yet. Putting all the crap on Povich's back is wrong. I mean, he pitched his way into the rotation in spring training and gave himself the ability to have that opportunity by pitching really well down the stretch in September for a team making a run for the playoffs. So he had every right to be there. He should be there. And as poorly as he's pitched, he's also found ways to wiggle out of trouble. So I don't believe that Chase McDermott. No, people who are banking on Chase McDermott or Brandon Young, they're not ready. Cade Povich is ready, and he's experiencing growing pains, and yet he still has a 3.60 ERA because of his ability to minimize. Randall goes on to say, eventually numbers are going to balance themselves out with Povich, and you will clearly see Povich is not ready. Or he could be knocking off the cobwebs right now, and then by the time we hit June, he's pitching like a number 3 in this rotation. Maybe that's what he's doing at that point. I'm not ready to make blanket statements about Cade Povich based off of 20 big league starts, if he even has that many. And then Brandel says Povich will be damn good in time. Should trade with Seattle for Lucas Evans. Trade with Miami for Alcantara. I think is how you actually pronounce the name and save this rotation. Would and should are 2 different things. They should. Will they? Not right now. And is it going to be too late by the time they do that? The Orioles offense needs to do their part to save this team. The bullpen needs to do their part to save this team, like not blowing a 3-run lead in the 8th inning. And the starting rotation isn't going to be this bad forever. I do believe Morton's got good starts in him. I believe Sagano's got good starts in him. We know that Dean Kramer does this every year. He starts out of the chute not great, and the next thing you know, by May, he's giving you 6 innings of 2-run ball, 7 innings of 1-run ball. He's going to be fine. This is what he does every year. Dean Kramer gets lit up early, figures it out. He'll go out against like the Nationals and give you 7 shutout innings, and then he'll be Dean Kramer again. It's early. It's too much of what we saw from the offense last year, and in today's case, from the bullpen the second half of last year, for us to feel comfortable. It just feels like a continuation. And Glenn's absolutely right. They are 7 games under 500 since June 20th, 27th last year. 7 games under 500. Something's got to change. Randall says the problem with most of the starters in baseball is they can't throw at least 5 different pitches for strikes. They throw the same 2-3 pitches and wear their arm out. John Means was successful because he threw more than 5 pitches for strikes when he wanted to. Proved throwing 100 miles per hour doesn't always reflect success. Well, yeah, when John Means was trying to throw 96, 97, he hurt his shoulder. He had to miss 4 starts. It took him a while to get back. When he was at his best, he was, every now and again touching 94, 95, but really sitting 92 to 94, and with a devastating changeup. It's just that John Means, you want to talk about how Grayson Rodriguez is injury prone. John Means was injury prone. 2 Tommy John surgeries in 3 years, and now he's recovering with the Cleveland Guardians. Let's see what else we got here. Jabo wants to know, why do we suck? There's not a veteran leader. There's not a veteran leader on the team, and maybe that could be Kyle Gibson. But again, that's another 35-plus-year-old starting pitcher on this roster. It's not meant to work because they're over the hill. But you need. I agree with Glenn. You need a position player that's going to be that leader, that's going to take that next step. And sometimes that means having to speak up and not worry what your best buddies on the team think about you. Leading by example. Jordan Westburg's a guy just like a Nick Markakis, where at the end of the year he will have quietly led by the product he puts out on the field. You need somebody that puts that product out on the field like Gunnar Henderson or Jordan Westburg that can also speak up and take control of a clubhouse and say, hey, we ain't going out like this. They don't have that guy yet. Maybe that guy's there and he hasn't developed into that guy yet. Zach Moore, the Pirates should have traded Luis Ortiz for Mountcastle. The trade was there. Pirates balked at it, but that's the arm we needed, and Pirates got a worse first baseman. There's plenty of pitchers out there that the Orioles could go after. It's too early because there's so many teams that think they're still in it, and the White Sox are really the White Sox and the Twins are really the only 2 teams. Pablo Lopez makes a lot of sense for this team, but even a team like the Twins doesn't think that they're out of it yet. So I agree with you that Luis Ortiz would have been a great move, and with the Pirates balking, it just wasn't meant to be. I'm just not in a hurry to trade Mountcastle because I think you need more bats, and I don't think getting rid of Mountcastle helps the ball club, especially because I don't think that it's got to be him and somebody and a couple other top prospects to get you solid pitching, and I just don't think that that's happening anytime soon. Zach says, I think Hyde's gone by the deadline. If they are at or below 500, Elias stays for another year or 2. I don't disagree with that. I don't know that they'd make a move in season with Hyde, but if they don't make the playoffs, there ain't no way Hyde's coming back next year. And if he does, I might not be coming back next year. With Mike Elias, I think that David Rubenstein gives him next offseason. And I have to believe that a guy that's as successful as him, you have 3 billionaires running your ball club, owning your ball club. I have to believe that if the Orioles miss the playoffs this year, that Rubenstein goes to Mike Elias and he's like, look, I'll keep you for another year, but you better go get some dudes. And if he doesn't, he's gone. That's how I feel about this. Hyde, I think that Hyde, I would not be shocked to learn that Elias may have said to him last offseason, we're going to keep you, but this has to be better next year. But then they'll mask it by saying that the injuries. Daniel Pitts, the Orioles miss the playoffs, Hyde should definitely be gone. Elias will stick around. Agreed. We already did that comment. Steve Robinson says the O's just can't get over the hump. It seems that way. It seems like none of our teams can get over the hump. The Ravens are one of the best teams in football every year, but they haven't been back to a Super Bowl since 2012. The Terps were really good in 2020 basketball-wise. They were really good this year. Got to the Sweet 16. They haven't been back. They haven't sniffed a national championship or a Final Four since 2002. And then you look at the Terps football. They suck. I don't even know why we even like anybody pays attention to Terps football. They suck. And then you look at the Orioles, 43 years probably, and 42 years and counting, 43 seasons and counting without a World Series. I don't think they're winning one this year. I'd be absolutely shocked if they even got to one, let alone won one this year. But it's been over 40 years since this team has been to a World Series. They've been to the playoffs a handful of times in my life, and no success to show for it. Three ALCSs and three ALCS losses in my lifetime. That's none of our teams can ever get over that hump. It's a perpetual thing. Zach Moore, would Cal ever take over as GM? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that I don't think Cal has any interest in becoming the GM. I think that he probably enjoys being a minority owner, getting to have his face on TV, having an input in the business side of things. But I also think he's really enjoying his time with his wife and you know, you know, living out his golden years. You know, doing what he wants to do. I don't think Cal has any interest in being a GM. I could be wrong, but I just don't get that impression. Because I think if he wanted to be a GM, he would be. Randall, if Elijah and Howard are talking, they are lying. It's just that damn simple. I have no confidence in either one. Now that I believe that Elias is lying to us or hiding the truth from us more often than not. I think that Brendan Hyde's a puppet for Mike Elias. And I saw something in an interview with him with Brendan Hyde last week where they were asking him about the lineup, and he said, in an ideal situation, we would have continuity in our lineup, which makes me think that even though he technically has final say over the lineup, they really are like, this is the lineup we think is going to win us the most games. I think this team, this regime, the front office in particular, spends way too much time staring at a computer screen because there are so many things that you cannot test on a computer, like camaraderie, confidence, getting hot at the right time. Like you ask a computer, there's no such thing as hot streaks or cold streaks. You just are the player that you are. And any of those streaks are bringing you back to who you are. I don't believe that. I believe that you can get confident and tear the cover off the ball for an entire season because you just believe that nobody can get you out. There's something to be said for confidence you're not going to find in analytics. Randall, spent over $140 million for the season on all the wrong players. Talk about stupidity. Man, we got to talk you off, man. I'm pissed off at how the season's going and what they did in the offseason, but it's not on all the wrong players. Tyler O'Neill to me has been disappointing, but he's hitting close to 300. He's got 2 home runs. Defense has been a little lackluster for me. I'm not a big fan of the strikeouts in the big situations, but I think you have the right players here for the most part. It's just they did nothing with the starting rotation. You can't have 2/3 of a ball club and expect to win ball games. The Mariners, they had a good starting rotation, a good bullpen last year. Terrible offense. They didn't make the playoffs. The Orioles this year, they've got a good. I believe they've got a good offense. They've got a strong bullpen. They have a crap starting rotation. That's not a way to make the playoffs. They've got to do something sooner rather than later. Daniel says the Orioles have 6 picks in the top 100 picks in this year's draft. Do you think we use any of them on pitchers? Absolutely not. That's not what they do. That's not what they do. They do not draft pitchers in the early rounds. I hate it, but they don't. It's all college bats. It's all high school or college bats. If it's a high school bat, it's not going to be a guy beyond like the second or third round, unless it's a Kobe Mayo where they're like, we can convince this guy to forego college to come play for us. And Daniel wants to know, this team has just not been any fun to watch. He doesn't want to know. He's saying this team has just not been any fun to watch this season. It feels like a chore and sad because I love this team. That's how I felt last year in the second half. It felt like a chore and I needed a break. I don't need a break yet. I still get home from work and want to go watch the Orioles because I know that this team is good. I know that the offense is good. I know that the bullpen is good. And I'm every night I know that they have starting pitching that has the potential to give them 6 innings of 3-run ball. That's a 4.50 ERA. If you have this offense and this bullpen gets 6 innings of 3-run ball from the starting pitcher, they're going to win 2/3 of their games. That's what's going to happen. They just gotta get to it. It's a slow start. It's magnified because of the slow finish last year. They've got to get to it, but I believe that this team's best baseball is in front of them this year. I don't think this is who they are. I think it's just who they started out to be this year. Today's show has been brought to you by County Sports Zone. Find every score from every high school sporting event all year long at countysports.zone. Proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. As for Take to Rake, I wasn't going to make Glenn stick around to do Take the Rake today. So we're going to extend Zach's and my Take the Rake from last week. Actually, we're going to be extending it until the week after Easter because we don't have a show on Easter Sunday. My Easter dinner on Sunday is right at 5 o'clock. We've got Easter plans on Saturday as well with my wife's side of the family. So no show next week. We will be back the following week, and that's when we will do really 3 weeks worth of Take the Rake with Zach Moore having taken Heston Curse out of me taking Gunnar Henderson. What else? Oh, one more read today. Support the Brigance Brigade with their annual 5.7K race and 1.57 mile fun walk Saturday, April 26th. The day will be full of racing, walking, and family fun starting at the Maryland Zoo in Baltimore, and it all supports the fight against ALS. ALS is very important to me and my family. My wife's grandfather passed away from ALS right after she and I started dating, so it's a cause definitely worth being part of. On top of the Brigance Brigade race and walk, there will also be a kids' fun run, sack races, a freeze dance competition, moonbounce, face painting, and cupcake bar, plus free zoo admission included with registration. Brunch from Jimmy's Famous Seafood can be added to your registration for $15, or you can add it day of. So race, play, and make lasting memories together. Register now at brigancebrigade.org. That's going to do it for me here on the Bat Around. Thank you so much to all of my sponsors. Without you, we don't have a show. Thank you so much to Glenn Clark for graciously jumping on the show with me last minute today and going twice as long as he was expected to. And thank you to all of the loyal listeners, viewers, fans, all of you that tune in every week. Without you, we 100% do not have a show. Until next week, see ya.